also thank the amazing staff of Yeshiva Beth Yehuda, Partners Detroit, and Prime 10 for setting this up and making it so beautiful and so tasty. And, of course, let's also thank Torah Anytime, an amazing website and app with thousands and thousands of hours of Torah content. Hopefully, this will be uploaded soon after today. If your friends missed it and they want to see it, they can check it out there at TorahAnytime.com. They got a website, they got an app, they do amazing, amazing work. Okay, so what? Let's start at the beginning. We're starting Genesis. Okay, fine. This year, over the course of the year, we will be learning Sefer Bereishis, the book of Genesis, and we'll be doing it in pieces throughout the year. We'll be breaking for Hanukkah, we'll be breaking for Purim, and doing special editions for those things. But we're going to be doing this pretty much through May, I think it is. So let's strap in for an incredible ride. The book of Genesis is an incredibly important book because it is the root of all of human existence, the root of our people. In the world, there is something called a zygote, right? A zygote is a cell. It is a single cell that is made up of a collaboration of two cells, the male and female cells, and together the zygote creates the very first version of you, right? It's the coming together of your mom's DNA and your dad's DNA, and it creates this beautiful little double helix, and that is you. That's the very first expression of you, and it's just one single cell. But amazingly, in that cell is everything. You are coded in that zygote. That zygote is going to determine what color eyes you have, how tall you're going to be. Now again, there are things that can stop that. And I'm sure you're aware that in North Korea, the people are on average 4 inches shorter than the people in South Korea because they are malnourished. But generally speaking, so it codes for your eye color. It codes for how tall you're going to be. It codes for what age you're going to start balding. I think mine started at 13. Like, you're a man, now you can start to bald, right? I didn't get a fountain pen. I got a subscription for Rogaine. You know? Excuse me. It codes for how likely you are to get diabetes, unfortunately, or certain kinds of cancer. It codes for autism, which affects 1 in 88 people born in America today and 1 in 54 boys born in America today. It codes for so much of what you are. And it's all there in that one little zygote. Now, the physical world, the scientific world, is just a mirror image of a deeper spiritual world that is the reality that underpins all of creation. And that's what I find. I am a little bit of a science geek. I love science. And because I find so much relations in science to understand the real things that are going on in the world from a spiritual perspective. So the idea of the zygote is that you go back to that first cell and you can pretty much see your entire physical life played out for you. So too when you go back to the book of Genesis, the book of Bereishis, you see all of mankind flowing out of it. As a matter of fact, there are mystics who say that you can find the entire root of the entire Torah in the first word, right? Talk about, again, the zygote is a single cell. They say you could find the entire root of the Torah in the first word, in the word Bereishis. The Vilna Gaon, who was one of the greatest Jews to have lived in the last 1,000 years, he was once giving a lecture and giving over this message to his students. And a student raised his hands in the back of the room and said, excuse me, Rabbi, you say that you could find the entire Torah, all the mitzvos, in the word Bereishis. Where do you find the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben? Pidyon Haben is an interesting mitzvah. It's the rule that if a person's first child is a son, and they're not Kohens or Levites or children of Kohens and Levites, then on the 30th day after the child is born, the child has to be redeemed from the Kohen for a sum of 5 silver salaim, 5 silver shekalim. So the Vilna Gaon, without batting an eyelash, okay, the Vilna Gaon, just on the spot, he said, oh, the mitzvah of Pidyon Haben, of course. The word Bereshit, and you can see this in your source sheets, is Beis, Resh, Aleph, Shin, Yud, Saf. The Vilna Gaon says the word Bereishis is an acronym for the sentence in Hebrew, Ben Rishon Achar Shloshim Yom Tifteh. Wow. Your first son you shall redeem after 30 days. Wow. Now you have to understand, the Vilna Gaon was the kind of person like that. He had that answer, right? You asked him the question, it wasn't like, let me think, let me get back to you. No, on the spot. And of course, the student was trying to ask the most random mitzvah. Obviously, if the Vilna Gaon could do that for Pidyon Rabben, he could have done it for any one of the 613 commandments. When he said you could find the entire Torah in the very first word of the Torah, Bereishis, the first sort of zygote of the Torah, he meant what he meant. And he pulled it out like that. Bereishis, Ben Rishon Achar Shloshim Yom Tifteh. You redeem the first son after 30 days. We can see the idea of Shabbos. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, by the way, if I was in the class, my next question is, what is the lucky six, right? If the rabbi can pull Ben Rishon Achar Shloshim Yom Tifteh out of the hat, what is the lucky six numbers for the lottery? Right? I'm sure he got that. I'm sure he had that on lockdown too. Of course, he'd be like, the lucky six is you sit here in class for 6 days and study Torah and stop asking foolish questions. But the idea of Shabbos. Shabbos is one of the most fundamental mitzvahs in the Torah. The word Bereishis, if you break it in half, is Bereishis. The word shis in Aramaic is 6. The word Bereishis, God created in 6. What are we celebrating in Shabbos? That God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. Right? Boom! That's also in the first word of the Torah. Now, of course, I'm not the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon didn't... That one student who was being a little bit chutzpah, oh yeah, where do you find the mitzvah of Pidyon Rabben? It wasn't like his students were about to start asking all the other ones, and he didn't leave a record of where all the other ones are. But again, that's the power of the book of Bereishis. This is the beginning of mankind. It's the beginning of Judaism. It's the beginning of our forefathers. It's where it all starts, and there's so much that we can learn about ourselves. There's a tradition, when we want to understand anything in the Torah, you look for the first time, it's there. So if you want to understand the male-female relationship, you look at the relationship between Adam and Eve. You want to understand what is sin? What is sin? Where does sin come from? Look at the first sin. You want to understand murder? Look at the first murder. There's so much that we can find in the first book of Bereishis, and we're not going to be able to do all of it, of course, but we're going to endeavor to go through as much of it as we can. So speaking of Shabbos, which we just mentioned, we said Shabbos celebrates God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th. So that, of course, brings us to the first important question. Why? Why did God create the world in 6 days and rest on the 7th? There's a tradition that it took God the effort of the letter He to create our world. Our world with all its insane complexity. That's one of the things I love about science too. The more you learn about science, the more you see how vastly complex our world is, right? Right now, as we speak, and as you're sitting there chilling out, there's trillions of things going on in your body. Right now, as you breathe in oxygen, how it's going from your lungs through the alveoli, throughout into your blood system, where it's captured by the red blood cells, which are big buses that bring oxygen to all the cells in your body, through literally thousands and thousands of miles of capillaries, little small passageways, so small they can only fit one red blood through cell at a time. That's how thin these passageways are. And the red blood cells drop off the oxygen at the cells, and the cells take in the oxygen, and the oxygen goes to mitochondria, where it goes through something called the Krebs cycle, which is the 24-part process, which takes the air and combines it with simple sugars, and to create energy in battery form called ATP out of ADP. And it's incredible. This is going on right now, inside of you, right now. Millions and billions of times a second. The world is so complex, but yet for Hashem, for God, creating that world was the complexity of saying the letter He. How hard is it to say the letter He? It's the easiest letter in all the alphabet. As a matter of fact, if you breathe, you're basically saying the letter He. What sound does He make? You're all saying it right now, and by the way, it's a little bit loud. If you guys could stop screaming He, all of you, I hear it all, stop it. You're all just sitting there repeating, hey. So there's a pasuk, and you can see the source in Rashi. It's based on a Gemara on Brachos. Source number 2, the Rashi on Bereishis, the 2nd chapter, the 4th pasuk. Behi baram, It says, Eila toldos shamayim va'aretz behi baram. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth, behi baram, when they were being created. The Gemara says, the Medrash says, behi baram, don't read it behi baram, but rather read it behei baram. With the letter Hey, God created them. He created them with the letter Hey, as it is written in the book of Isaiah, Ki biyah Adonai sur olamim. With the name Yud and Hey, which is one of God's names, Hashem is the rock of the worlds. There's two worlds. There's the world to come, there's the spiritual world, and there's the physical world. And they were created with God's name, Yud Hey. The Yud is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, right? You have a Yud and then you cut it in half. What do you have left? A Yud. You cut it in half again, it's a Yud. A Yud is basically a little speck, right? It's the smallest thing in all, like space and time, so to speak. So that represents the spiritual world. It doesn't take up any place. It's not really a physical entity. It's the smallest thing. It just has to be represented by something, so we kind of represent it by a dot. That was the spiritual world. The physical world is created with the letter Hey. Behei baram. Eila toldos shamayim va'aretz behei baram. This is the generations of heavens and earth that God created with a Hey. Why did God create them with a Hey? Because the Hey has the shape of the Hey. It's got a big gaping hole at the bottom. It's very easy to fall out the bottom in this world. It's wide open. But you can crawl back in. There's an entranceway back at the top, right? Think about a Hay. So it's got a little leg, right? So there's an entranceway to climb back in. This whole world is about refining ourselves and perfecting ourselves and making up for our mistakes. Yes, we're all bound to fall out of the bottom sometime. But as long as we're on this world, once we get to the spiritual world, when we get to the letter Yud world, when we get to the next world, we can't change ourselves anymore. This is the changing world. This is the world in which we can fall out of the bottom and climb back in the top. So God creates this world with the letter Hey. How much effort does it take to create the letter Hey? Absolutely no effort. God is so complex. You know, for us as a human being, the more complex something it is, the harder it is for us to create. So for me to create a simple cup, no big deal. Take some clay, make a hole in the middle of the lump, and I have a cup. But to create a watch that has 20 different complications, that could take a Swiss watch master a year to make one watch because it's so complicated. But the more complex you are, the less complexity bothers you, right? For me to make a calculation of like what's 27,324 divided by 900,723,700, blah, blah, blah. It's too many digits. It's very hard for me to do it. You put that into a computer and the computer spits out the answer in a second because the computer has much more computing capability than me. So the more complex the answerer is, the more easy it is to answer a complex question or create a complex thing. God is infinitely complex. For Him to create this world, which is so complex, with all of our bodies and our cells and the living organisms and the flora and the fauna and the mountains and the water system and everything, it is so inconsequential to God who is infinite. It's behei baram. So if God creates the world with a Hey, why does He create it in 6 days? Why are there the 6 days of creation? What took so long? Right? God could just say, and boom, the world is there with all its complexity. But no, that's not what God does. God layers it on. The first day God creates the light, and the second day God creates the heavens and separates the atmosphere, the upper waters, the lower waters, and the third day He pulls back the water, there's vegetation, the fourth day the sun and the stars and the constellations and everything, and then the fifth day the fish and the fowl, and the sixth day the animals and the humans. Why? God's not working on a time clock. Right? It's not like God's trying to stretch out the job. It's billable hours. Billable hours, right? Yeah, I can do this job in 5 minutes, but I'm getting paid by the government. One more amazing thing, by the way. H2O, right? How cool is it that one oxygen molecule bonds with two hydrogen? It's two gases coming together, creating this thing, which is the source of all life. Just wild, crazy things all over the world when you start looking at things with a scientific eye. Just overwhelms you with God's greatness. And I'm going to thank Him for that greatness right now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh bidvaro. So we got to understand why Hashem created the world in 7 days. And of course, the answer is God, 6 days. Well, sort of the seventh is actually part of the 7 days of creation too, because Shabbos is an essential component of creation too, even though you're not creating. Maybe we'll talk about that when we talk about Shabbos. But Why did Hashem create the world in 6 days? Not because he needed 6 days to create the world. He was modeling behavior for us. He was showing us how we are going to create our world. Again, he could have created all the world with all its complexity in 3 seconds flat, or in a millisecond. But then we would be totally unable to do anything like that. We're not infinite. We're not God. So God wanted to create the world in a way in which we could learn. And he modeled for us the proper behavior of layering, building. Let's understand the way that God did it, because it's very important for us to understand what our role in this world is. Again, the reason why God created the world was for humankind, the only being with free will. And God is modeling behavior for us in the very acts of creation. We have to learn from God. Okay, so let's look at the text. Source number 3. The first and second verses in the book of Bereishis. Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz, in the beginning of God's creations. In the beginning of God's creation. Not in the beginning God created, but in the beginning of God's creation of the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was astonishingly empty. V'haaretz haisa sohu vavohu, which we translate as, Art Scroll translates it. It's like, Art Scroll is today the absolute power over here. Now the earth, they translated, the earth was astonishingly empty. Okay? And darkness was on the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God, Ruach Elokim merachefas al pnei hamayim, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. Now, by the way, it's fascinating when we understand that there are many opinions on what Bereishis bara Elokim es hashamayim v'haaretz. Again, there's on that verse alone, that's the zygote, right? There's so much out there. There's the idea that before God even created everything else, there was just the creation of time itself, which from a scientific perspective is the Higgs boson, which is a very, very complicated topic. I actually wrote about this extensively, and it took me like 8 hours of research just to understand it, and then I had to figure out how I can break it down to be able to explain it. So that's also just a fascinating piece of creation. Fascinating. The more science discovers, the more we see how this Torah was so perfect and so prescient and describing what we even 20 years ago had no idea what it was, and now science discovers it, and now we look back in the verse and it makes perfect sense. But we can't get into the Higgs boson right now because that will take us the rest of the class, and you probably don't want to know about force fields and quantum mechanics. So, okay. So, tohu vavohu. Astonishingly empty. Is that what tohu vavohu was? Astonishingly empty. What does that mean? So, Nachmanides, the Ramban, he describes the idea of tohu vavohu as tohu is absolute unformed matter. Okay? So if you want to use like a modern day equivalent, just think of just a lump of clay. It's got no function. All it is unformed matter. It's got enormous potential. You can form and fashion it into anything you want. But it's just there. The Ramban brings the Greek term for it. It's called heiluli. It's like this, heiluli. It's unformed matter. That's tohu. Vohu is when you sort of just first begin to create some kind of functionality out of it. Let's explain. I go to Claymaking 101, right? There's people sitting there. There's the experts sitting around a wheel and making beautiful pottery. I'm not there yet. So they give me a lump of clay. And they say, here you go, create something. I go, okay. All right, I'm going to create something. And I just take the lump of clay and I push down with my thumbs and just make a little bit of an indentation. It's like a little bit of a bowl, okay? And I'm like, oh, look, I created a bowl. And they're very good, Leiby. You did great today. We don't want to overwork you. You probably should take this home and show your parents. They'll be so proud of you. That was my problem as a kid. Right? So you bring home this beautiful lump of clay. You're like, oh my gosh, look, I made a bowl today in pottery class. And your parents are like, that's amazing, Leiby. You're so talented. So what am I going to do with that bowl, right? So it's kind of made out of clay. And the truth of the matter is, you don't want to put any food in it because it would pick up clay, right? Meaning you pour milk and cereal into that, you're gonna be eating cereal clay, right? So your parents would be like, why don't you can put your keys in there. You put your tchotchkes in there. So, all right, so I'm like, Mom, Dad, why don't you put your keys in there? Okay, we'll put our keys in there. So we put this little clay shape. It's the most basic shape, right? What did I do? I took an unformed piece of matter and I did the most basic impression on it. And now it's actually formed matter. It has a function. And we leave it by the entrance to the house. And my parents, when they come in, they want to take out their keys, their change, they drop it in this bowl of clay. Very good, beautiful, right? I walk around for a week, I'm all happy, but then I say, you know what? It's kind of plain, right? I'm not feeling super talented on that. Maybe I should paint it, right? I should paint it purple, right? I should paint it purple. So I go back to my parents, I say, Mom, Dad, I'm going to paint this bowl purple. And they're like, wow, Leiby, I don't know, are you sure you can do that, right? I'm like, yeah, I think I got this, right? So I take my paint out and I paint it purple. Now here's something very important. When I paint it purple, I just destroyed its function. Because when it's got wet paint all over it. Can my parents put their keys and their change in it? No, because then it's going to have paint all over it. I just destroyed all that I had. I had a bowl that was able to carry keys and change, and now it can do nothing. It's got wet paint all over it. But why did I do that? Because after the paint dries, now it's a more pretty bowl to carry keys and change, right? So even though while I was in order to work on it, I had to really break down its functionality. I just say, no, this is not enough. This is not good. A bowl's not good. I want to make a purple bowl. In order to make a purple bowl, I got to break down its functionality, destroy its functionality, but then do it to make a better functionality. Now we have a pretty purple bowl at the entrance. Okay, great. For another week goes by, and we've got a purple bowl at the entrance, and my parents proudly put their keys and their change in it when they walk into the house. When they walk out, they got a nice, pretty purple bowl. But then I decide, I want to eat cereal in it, but I can't because it will get the paint in it. So what do I got to do now? Now I got to put a glaze on it, and I got to fire it in a kiln where it's going to be burned to like 3,800 degrees, but when it comes out, it will now have like a ceramic texture, a nice glaze on the top, and I can eat my cereal out of it for the rest of my life. When I put on the glaze, when I put it in the oven at 3,800, I've destroyed it. It's no longer a pretty purple bowl into which you can put your keys. You can't put anything into it. It's 3,800 degrees or 2,500, I don't know, whatever the kiln is, very, very hot. Even when I put the glaze on it, again, it's wet, it's got a glaze. But why did I destroy my bowl? Because I was going to build something greater on top of it. That is the system of life. In life, our goals are to make ourselves a goal and to go about accomplishing it, to give function to areas of our life that are dormant. There are areas of our life that are like a lump of clay. They're not achieving anything right now. They're heyuli. They're unformed matter. So I say, I want to take this lump of clay and I want to make a function out of it. And I set myself a goal. I am now going to start on Tuesday mornings, I'm going to go volunteer at Yad Ezra and help make baskets of food to be given out to people who need it. Great. I do that, now I've created function, right? It's amazing, amazing. Do I stop there? Hopefully not. Hopefully I don't just stop with a pretty purple bowl. I say, wait, while I'm coming into Yad Ezra, I noticed that they are always backlogged on their computer system. I worked in computers. I'm retired now, but I worked in computers my whole life. Why don't I help set up their database? Because they're always like, it's a little bit, they're on a backlog. It's a chaos. There are people applying for assistance and they don't, I'll stay an extra hour and I'll set up their database. Now listen carefully. When I say that, what I'm saying is that I'm not doing enough. I'm breaking my own vessel. I'm saying it's not enough that I just simply come here on Tuesday mornings and volunteer to make baskets for 2 hours of food. That's not enough. I'm breaking down that function. I'm saying that's not enough. I got to build on top of that. So then I build on top of that. I start staying extra and building their database. Is that enough? Do I stop there? No, if I've got more time, I put in more, and I build on top of that. The idea is that life, we're supposed to always be taking yesterday's accomplishments and making them just a pedestal for today's goals. You ever see these trophies that kids get, right? It's absurd today, right? A kid goes to camp, he comes home with a duffel bag full of trophies, right? It's like, well, what were the trophies for? I went swimming. Okay, I didn't get a trophy for that when I was a kid. You went swimming. Here we go, Bobby, we're so proud. You're amazing, you went swimming. Well, I didn't really go in. I sat on the side and played on my Game Boy, but I went to the swimming pool. Oh, beautiful. Let's put that trophy on our mantelpiece. It's so beautiful. And then the trophies have gotten bigger and bigger. It used to be like, there'd be a trophy with like a little like marble or like little stone stand with a pitcher or a batter. But now they've got like stands on top of stands, and it's like second level, third level. They got trophies that are like this high. I'm talking about, like, for real, kids' trophies that are this high. They got all kinds of many layers up. The goal of life is to create many layers up. Let's use a human face for this. Let's talk about Bob for a moment. Bob is the ultimate of unformed matter. What's the ultimate of unformed matter? He's a drug addict doing nothing. Just his brains are blasted. He's not contributing to society. He's literally doing nothing. Sitting all day at home and just getting high and playing video games. Unformed matter. And the family decides they're going to have an intervention. And everyone gathers around. And they all gather and they say, Bobby, you're not okay. We're concerned about you. What you're doing, you're throwing your life away. You're all unformed matter. You have so much potential. What are you doing? You gotta get sober. And they press him and they encourage him, and finally says, okay, fine. They send him off to a 30-day treatment center, detox, rehab, the whole deal. He comes back home, and he's clean, and he's cleaned out of his system, he's detoxed. And when he comes home, there's a big party for him. The whole family's there. Bobby, we're so proud of you, it's amazing. You did it, you stayed through, you stuck it out through the whole program, and we're so proud of you, and they have a big cake, and Bobby's just, it's amazing. Now Bobby is clean. Bobby wakes up the next day, and what does he do? He plays video games. It's not as fun when you're not high, but it's still fun. And what does he do the next day? He plays video games. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. This goes on for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. The family makes an intervention. They say, Bobby, we're worried about you. You're throwing your life away. All you're doing is just sitting here playing video games all day. You've got to do something with your life. We're concerned about you. And everyone's pressuring him and all that. He's like, okay, fine. What should I do? We want you to go to school, get training. Why don't you go to a technical school and learn how to become a mechanic? All right, I'll go to school. He enrolls in the Ford, technical school mechanic program. For 9 months, he goes to school 5 days a week, and he learns about cars and spark plugs and ignition and windshield wipers and all the different fluids, and he learns how to, test cars and fix cars. Great. He comes out, he graduates, graduation day. Everyone makes a big party. There's a big cake. Bob, you're the man. Bob, you're the man, right? Great. He's the man. Now, not only is Bob clean, but Bob has got a skill. Bob's got a marketable skill. He's a mechanic. Bob the mechanic. Beautiful. Everyone's happy. What does Bob do the next day? Plays video games. This goes on for a week, for a month, for a year. They make another intervention. Bob, man, we're worried about you. This is not okay. You're throwing your life away. And he's like, what do you mean? You guys made me a cake. I came home from rehab. You made me a cake. I was clean. I'm still clean. And then you got angry. You made an intervention. I'm a mechanic now. Why are you made me a cake. Remember, you had a whole party? Yeah, but Bob, you got to get a job. That was yesterday's accomplishment. You got to move to the next step. All right. I'll get a job. The next day, he goes out looking. He goes to the Ford dealership down the road. Bob Whelan Ford, boom, gets a job as a mechanic. And he goes there 6 days a week. Not 6 days a week, 9 to 5. And he goes and he works on cars. When he's done, he goes over to the Myers next door, picks up a 6-pack of A&W root beer. Right? And I forgot, when he gets his job and he's working, everyone makes him a big party. Bob, you're the man, there's a cake and everything. But then after work every day, he picks up a 6-pack of root beer and goes and plays video games. This goes on for a year. And they make him an intervention. Bob, we're worried about you. It's not okay. You're doing, yes, you're working and you're making money, but you're not doing anything with your life. You come home and you sit there with your A&W root beer and you play video games all day. You got to start thinking about a relationship, a family maybe. Like, oh really? Like, yeah, why don't you maybe meet a girl? Maybe you should think about the family life, whatever. He says, okay. So he goes out with a girl, he meets a girl. They're in a relationship. Great. They make him a party. They're hanging out together. He's got a girlfriend for the first time in his life. Amazing. They're going out for 8 years, whatever. Nothing's doing, right? You guys know the situation. They make him an intervention. Bob, it's not okay. You got to get married. He's like, really? Okay, fine. I'll get married. He gets married. No kids. Make an intervention. So on and so forth. And he keeps on saying, like, but you made me a cake. But you made me a cake. Yeah. We made you a cake for yesterday's accomplishments. But yesterday's accomplishments are supposed to be the pedestals for tomorrow's goals. You're never supposed to say, oh, okay, I'm done. I got the cake, I'm done. No, you make a functionality out of yourself. You were unformed matter. You were a drug addict. You made your first functionality. You got clean. Great. Now the next step, get a job. Great. Now the next step, find a girl. Great. Now get married. Great. Now have children. Great. Now get involved with your community. Help out. It's all about building tomorrow's goals on top of yesterday's accomplishments. Now remember, every time they make an intervention, they're saying, Bob, you're not okay. They're like breaking down his previous accomplishments, but they're not really. They're saying the only way you move forward in life is if you take yesterday's accomplishments and say, that's not enough. Today, I see this all the time. You know, people when they're faced with the prospect of change, of changing their lives, they say, but I'm okay. I'm a good person. What do you want from me? I'm a good person. I pay my taxes. I'm honest. I'm a decent father. I'm a decent husband. I'm a nice person. Great. We made you a cake a year ago for that. What have you done since? You got to build on that. It's never okay to just say, I'm okay. Meaning, yes, you were okay, but it's just not enough. We were so glad when you were clean. Now remember, of course, the pedestals have to all stay in place. You can't ever give back your earlier accomplishments or you start falling, meaning, let's say he gets, okay, so he got clean, he got a skill, he got a job, he found a girl, he got married, he had children. Let's say he starts using again. Pulls the pedestal out, the whole thing could topple, right? So we have to maintain our previous goals. They have to still be there. They're the pedestal, but we cannot stop. That's why God creates the world in a multi-step process. God creates the world. And he says, Yehi or, let there be light. Big bang, boom, light all over the world. Amazing. And God says, this is great. The next day, God's up and early. The second day of creation. Wait a second. That was great. That was amazing. But it's not enough. We have to break down yesterday's functionality. It wasn't enough. Now we got to create a heavens with waters below and waters above. And then he goes the next day and he says, we got to pull back the waters and we got to let the dry land show. And we got to bring out vegetation. He says, that's great. Let's make a cake. And then he goes on. God didn't need 6 days to create the world. God could have created it in a blink. He was modeling for us how we have to create our lives. Anytime we just say we're okay, we're not okay. It's hard to hear. I'm breaking your vessel. You understand what I'm saying? The minute you start painting your vessel, the minute you start going for the next level up, it's like saying this functionality was not good enough. And you're breaking the functionality, but for a greater purpose. So now you have a purple vessel. So now you have a glazed vessel. You can eat your cereal. We move up in life. And for so many people, this is a struggle because they say, what are you saying? I'm not okay the way I am? No, you're great the way you are, but you're never okay to stop. That's the message. When does God stop creating? Shabbos. You know what Shabbos is a microcosm for? Shabbos is a microcosm for the world to come. Shabbos is a me'ein olam haba. It's a little taste of the world to come. You know when you can stop recreating yourself and building on top of yourself? When you go to the world to come. I always say, People say, oh, you barely sleep. I should sleep more, no question about it. I say, I've got all of eternity to sleep. I've got billions of years to sleep after I pass. I've only got a few years to be awake. I only got a few years to be awake. I can't stop. We can't stop. We can't afford to stop. We can't afford to just settle in and say, this is good. No, God created it, and it was good. But the next day he said, what can we do next? And he created another thing, and he said, this is good. And the next day he said, what can we do next? That's the model for us. Okay. That is idea number 1. Idea number 2. Let's look at source number 4. So there's a lot of verses here. There's a bunch of them, and they describe how God looks at his own creation. So this is Bereishis 1:4. Vayar Elokim es haor ki tov, and God saw that the light was good. Bereishis 1:10. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of waters he called seas, and God saw that it was good. Genesis 1:12. And the earth gave forth vegetation, seed yielding herbs according to its kind, and trees producing fruit, in which its seed is found, according to its kind. God created vegetation, and God saw that it was good. Bereishis 1:18. God created all the stars and the constellations, and he gave them to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate between the light and between the darkness, and God saw that it was good. Genesis 1:21, Bereishis 1:21. And God created the taninim, the great sea monsters, and every living creature that crawls, with which the waters swarmed, according to their kind, and every winged fowl according to its kind. Vayar Elokim ki tov, and God saw that it was good. Bereishis 1:25. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kind, and the cattle according to their kind, and all the creeping things of the ground according to their kind. Vayar Elokim ki tov, and God saw that it was good. Genesis 1:31. Bereishis 1:31. Vayar Elokim es kol asher asa, and God saw all that he had made. V'hinei tov ma'od, and behold, it was very good. It seems like God's got this thing for complimenting himself. And we may know somebody else who's got that situation. I don't know if you guys heard yesterday, Trump made an announcement to the world that he's very smart. He literally did that. It's a very smart thing to do, by the way. It's a very smart thing to tell people that you are smart. He also told people that he has the greatest memory of any president. Right? Of course, because he knows this, because he remembers all the rest of those presidents. He remembers John Quincy Adams. Not such a good memory, right? He's got a great memory. So there's like this little self-congratulation thing going on over here. And while it's very, not fitting, but very expected of Trump, it's almost a little less expected of God, right? What's the deal, God? You gave yourself in the span of 6 days of creation, a total of 7 compliments. Wow, right? I mean, I actually spoke with somebody yesterday. Asked him, how many compliments did you give your wife last year? Like from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, 57777. And the number was probably something he could count on both hands. Something we should all be doing is just being hyper aware of how many compliments we give a day, right? We should really, it's an amazing thing. What I told this person is, I said, I want you to create a spreadsheet. We talked about this before Yom Kippur. Create a spreadsheet and track the compliments you give. If you give 100 compliments this year, just make an entry on your phone, on the Google Docs. Remember we talked about that? Just create a spreadsheet and just you put in today's 10/26. You put in 10/26. I told my wife that she looked good. I told my wife the dinner was great. I told my wife she made a great choice on the curtains. I told my wife, just record them. If you have 100 compliments this year, you'll have a 10x, right? A 10 times return on your money, so to speak. A 10-fold improvement. So compliments are very important things that we should sprinkle liberally out to everybody. Right? It's an amazing thing. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it makes other people's lives better. It's so easy. And by the way, people will love you for it. people always love to see the person who every time they see that person, oh, I met your daughter the other day, she's amazing, or I met your son, they're amazing, oh, I love the way you did your hair, those are great shoes, and so on. You know, people love to be around that kind of person. It's not a bad thing for popularity. Just give out liberal, just sprinkle compliments all over. But that's to others. That's to others. God seems to be doing a lot of self-congratulation. Now, granted, there was no one else there to compliment him. The same thing applies to Trump. There's no one else there complimenting him. Okay. So, and by the way, this has got nothing. I want to put this caveat out there. When I make lines about the Donald, I'm absolutely, these are not political statements at all. Meaning, you have no idea whether I'm a liberal or a conservative, right? And but these are just comments about a person, a specific individual. So I just want to make that very clear, right? This is not a political endorsement of either sides or either policies. This is, I actually wish people would be focused more on the policies. Okay. Anyway, so what's the deal with all the God compliments? So here's an important idea. And again, God doesn't need to give God compliments. He absolutely doesn't need to give God compliments. Once again, he's modeling for us. He's modeling for us appropriate behavior. We need to be able to stop once in a while and congratulate ourselves. It is absolutely imperative. In Judaism, there's something called a siyum. A siyum is a celebration that you make upon the completion of a specific endeavor in Torah study. So I endeavored to finish tractate Bereishis in the Talmud. I finished it, I make a party. The purpose of that party is to give thanks to God that he gave me the intellect and ability to finish this milestone, but also to appreciate my own accomplishment. We don't have a lot of things that we accomplish in this world because most of the things that are in our lives are in the hand of God. Whether we're smart or not smart, that's not an accomplishment, generally speaking. I mean, we can up our IQ, by the way. We can. And I'll tell you how, well, it's not done by watching mass amounts of daytime TV. The way you up your IQ is by reading a lot, by listening to classical music, which is very, very metered and exact, right? There are things that we can do to actually up our IQ. But generally speaking, meaning those things, wisdom, looks, money, that all comes from God. There are very few areas where we have actual spiritual accomplishments. And by the way, you should know, this person I spoke to last night, I told him, if you start giving your wife compliments, tell me about it. I will be your cheerleader. I will be your cheerleader. And I really mean that because I care about this person and I know that he's in a tough spot with his relationship. And I know that people require encouragement and support in order to keep going. Mm-hmm. Encouragement and support, think of it as the fuel that you put in your success tank. So you've got energy and you go out and you accomplish something big. If there's no encouragement, if there's no support, you start running on low, and you start running out of gas. God doesn't need God compliments, but he's modeling for us that when you accomplish something, make sure to step back and have that cake, have that celebration. It's important because when you celebrate your accomplishments, and accomplishments, again, are most importantly are moral victories. When you celebrate your accomplishments, you can move forward to the next one. I know people who have made parties to celebrate. I know a guy, he finished his residency, and it was a big struggle for him to keep Shabbos during his residency. He didn't grow up Shomer Shabbos. He went to medical school. It's sometimes very hard to find residencies, and I know people who were promised by the hospital a Shomer Shabbos residency, and then a couple years in, they were told, listen, you got to start working Saturday shifts or we're kicking you out. I remember a guy went to 4 years of medical school, 2 years, already 3 years of residency, right? They kick you out of your program, you're in really big trouble. It's not easy to find. If you are removed from a program, it's incredible, as it is hard to find a residency. Their whole livelihood is on the line. And there are people, even people who are normally Shomer Shabbos, who will seek various, there's ways around, there's heter, there's this, there's that. I know somebody, when he finished his residency, and he kept Shabbos the entire time, he made a celebration. He made a kiddush. It was beautiful. I know people who have made kiddushes to celebrate a year of not talking in shul. It's amazing. No, that's amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment. For real. And people go to shul. Unfortunately, it's like going into God's house in the middle of God. You're talking to God, and then you're also talking about the Astros and the Yankees and the Dodgers. It's absurd. But it's a big challenge because you don't see people the whole week. You're busy. You're working. You're running around. When do you see people? You see them on Shabbos. And to be able to say that I went to a shul for a year and didn't talk to anybody during davening, I sat and talked to God during davening, is an amazing accomplishment. And you should make a kiddush, make a party, celebrate it, so you'll have the fuel in your tank to keep on going. God doesn't need God compliments. He's modeling for us. When you achieve a level, a goal that you set out for yourself, make a celebration. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, Baruch Hashem, with incredible gratitude to God and my wife, I finished what's called Shas. I finished studying the entire Talmud. It's an endeavor that took me over 15 years. It's an endeavor that took me over 15 years. It wasn't just like going to a class and listening. It was like really studying it, and it was an incredible journey. Now, at one point, when you study Talmud, some of the tractates are pretty small, 30 pages, and you can finish them relatively quickly. And I was making a lot of siyums, and I felt that after a while, it was just being a drag on people, that I was making these siyums, like, I gotta get up, and you read the last piece, and whatever, So I stopped making the siyums. And I'm telling you right now that I ended up going into a break. I got burned out. And I ended up going to a break, and I stopped studying. I had for a while, I dropped off that endeavor. And it took me a while to get back on the track because I wasn't properly filling my tank. If you don't celebrate your accomplishments, you won't be able to move forward for the next one and the next one. So God doesn't need God compliments. God is modeling for us. Okay. That is two ideas that I think we're going to have to stop with because there's no time to, each idea here is another 15 minutes. We may have to, by the way, the series is set up is, I already mapped out the series. We may have to change the dates. This study of Genesis, by the way, may bleed into next year. And I hope you're okay with that. Meaning there's just good material, and I don't want to leave good material behind. So it may take a couple more years than we thought and we expected, but that's okay. Alrighty, guys?
We'll be here.
You'll be here. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. Have a wonderful week.